Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Nina Warhurst.
Just gone 8 o'clock, the headlines for you on this Monday morning. The Prime Minister urges parents to send children back to school. He says it's far more damaging for development and health to be kept at home.
We'll be speaking to England Schools Minister Nick Gibb in the next half hour.
In Northern Ireland this morning, many children will be returning to classes today for the first time since the lockdown was imposed.
The man who killed 51 people at 2 mosques in New Zealand in March last year arrives in court to be sentenced for the worst terror attack in the country's history.
Good morning. As the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme enters its final full week, should it be extended? The industry says it needs more time to safeguard the future for thousands of bars, pubs and restaurants.
Paralympic champion Hannah Cockcroft tells Sally about her fears over whether disability sport will recover from the coronavirus pandemic. It's Monday, it's the 24th of August. Top story for you this morning. Boris Johnson has issued a direct appeal to parents to send children back to school when they reopen.
He says the risk of catching coronavirus in school is very small, but that the life chances of a generation of pupils are at stake if they don't go back. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley joins us from Westminster. Morning, Nick. How significant is this message?
It's a big deal, Nina, because clearly the government sees it as a big priority to make sure that kids are back in school in England when they start to reopen next week. And Boris Johnson is making a pretty direct plea to parents, saying to them, we think that it's safe, we think that the best thing to do is to make sure that as many children are back in the classroom as quickly as possible. Let me just take you through exactly what Boris Johnson is saying this morning. So he says, as the Chief Medical Officer has said, the risk of contracting COVID-19 in school is very small, and it's far more damaging for a child's development and their health and well-being to be away from school any longer. This is why he says it's vitally important that we get our children back into the classroom to learn and to be with their friends. Nothing will have a greater effect on the life chances of our children than returning to school. Boris Johnson has the experts on his side as well. Over the weekend, we had the chief medical officers and their deputies from across the UK saying that they think chances of kids getting coronavirus in school and becoming seriously ill are pretty negligible. And in the last hour, we heard from the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England on Breakfast, Dr. Jenny Harries. Have a listen to what she had to say.
We think that the risks for children in schools is exceptionally small from COVID, but the risks of not attending school are significant. We know that if children miss out on their education, particularly those in more deprived areas, that will have a lasting negative impact on their health and their life chances.
We know there is some nervousness among parents about the prospect of schools opening back up in England next week. Unions have been calling for some more information from government, a plan B for if there are local outbreaks. But the government is definitely wedded to this idea itself. It's set itself a big political challenge to make sure that schools do start to reopen in England next week. It is worth just pointing out that in Northern Ireland, some years go back today, some are later. Wales, the plan is to get kids back in school next month as well. In Scotland, it's already happened. There have been some local outbreaks, but officials are insisting that's not because of transmission in school. It's actually a lot to do with the activity that goes around school. So, parents at the front gate, some going back to work because they don't have childcare issues, teachers as well. And another message we're getting from the experts is that social distancing is going to be really important for teachers and for older pupils when schools in England do start to reopen.
That's it. It's all the issues around the schools opening, isn't it? Thank you, Nick. And we will be speaking to Schools Minister Nick Gibb at 8:30.
He's going to be here live with us shortly. A number of lockdown restrictions that were imposed in Aberdeen earlier this month have been lifted. Tighter rules were introduced because of a surge of cases in the city. A 5-mile limit on non-essential travel and a ban on indoor gatherings has been removed. And pubs, cafes and restaurants will be able to reopen from Wednesday. That's subject to environmental health checks.
The sentencing hearing has started for the far-right gunman who murdered 51 people in attacks on 2 mosques in New Zealand last year.
29-year-old Brenton Tarrant, who is representing himself, faces life in prison without parole. We can speak to TV New Zealand's Ryan Boswell, who is joining us from outside the High Court in Christchurch. Now, there's a very long delay on the line, so there might be a bit of a gap. Ryan, thank you for talking to us on BBC Breakfast this morning. It must have been a really emotional day for some of the families today.
Good morning. Yes, today Brenton Tarrant came face to face with some of his victims and their families. The court hearing how the shooting played out and how, in fact, Tarrant laughed throughout. He shot people and then went back to shoot them again as they lay on the ground. The court heard that Tarrant had amassed a number of weapons and then modified them to make them as deadly as possible. He had also planned to blow up those 2 mosques in Christchurch involved in the shootings.
And I know that this is something which has sort of taken the attention of not only people in New Zealand but around the world. I wonder what the feeling is now, sort of remembering the worst terror attack in New Zealand's history.
It has been traumatic, and no doubt for the victims and their families that will continue to be the case. Today we did hear from some of those victims and their families. One woman said that she had forgiven Tarrant. Another man said that he was thankful to Tarrant for bringing the community closer together. In total, there are 66 victim impact statements that will be presented to the court over the next few days. The judge ultimately deciding whether Brenton Tarrant should serve life behind bars with no parole.